So, in a quick summary, I explained in the beginning of this report, say, Jehovah is the unborn king. So, Jehovah is the inheritance of Israel, of the Jews, who have now become the Jews. So the inheritance and the blessing, which is the inheritance and the birthright, by covenant of the Jews is Jehovah, God Himself. And so the blessings are that He will restore Israel and Zion and Jerusalem. Right. So that's part of the blessings. And all the nations will join themselves to them. Right, that's the promise of Israel. So Israel is like a firstborn. In the context of this blessing, there's no other nation or other people that we know of that have been promised this birthright. They're the firstborn. The people that call themselves Jews are the firstborn. And let's talk about that. And this is why it's important to understand ukuhlonipisa kwaJesu. Yeah. Ukuhlonipisa kwaJesu. Alright. So what Jesus did, He came along. And remember I mentioned to you, before all of this, the prophecies that were made by the prophets, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, were meant to have played out during the times of Babylon, Greece, and Persia. But it didn't happen. So way after Greece, here comes Rome. And the prophecies, the inheritance of Israel has not been come along. The blessings that were promised to Israel has not been fulfilled. And we are in Rome already. So what the importance of Jesus coming, or the New Testament, what people call the New Testament, is the fact that, and this is why I think it's important for Abba-Nazareth not to disregard the New Testament and say we're about the Old Testament. Even the New Testament, the importance of the New Testament is to say that the promises of Israel have now been recontextualized. I don't know if that makes any sense. So meaning that it's not going to be a little Babylon, a little Persia, a little Tyre, a little Egypt, because it's too late now. We're in Rome. We've passed Babylon, we've passed Persia, we've passed Greece. We're in Rome now, and now Jesus comes, to say, He, the unborn king, is coming. But the only difference now is saying He's coming in His name. Right. So this is a very important thing. This is a clearly piece of what Jesus is saying. I am just coming like a groom, to show you the principle of who is going to be the bride, who is coming to fulfill the promises of the prophets. And what's also very important is the scripture where Jesus laments over Jerusalem after he marches into it. Let me just get into that quick. So I just found the verse that I was looking for. It's in Luke chapter 19, verse 39. I'll start from there. So another important thing, like we're saying here, like a groom saying that the bride will come in his name. Jesus was basically saying that the coming king, the unborn king, is going to come in his name. Like a groom, like a bride takes the name of the groom. So this is a very important principle that Jesus comes. So he comes to Cloney Peace to say, look, whatever you heard the prophet saying is not going to happen in a literal sense. It's not going to happen in a literal sense of the historical Israel. Right, this is what Jesus is saying. And even furthermore, because of the actions and how the people in Rome, by the time it's already too late, received him. This is what he says to the Jews about them. Those who call themselves Jews now. So this is after he walks in, he marches into Jerusalem on the cart, to the donkey cart, and he says, however, some of the Pharisees from the crowd said to him, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. But in reply he said, I tell you, if these remain silent, the stones will cry out. So now they were upset about the fact that they were saying, blessed is the one coming as king in Jehovah's name. Peace in heaven and glory in the heights above. But in reply, so you see how they were upset that they were calling him the king. So they despised their birthright. They didn't want to see their inheritance. They didn't want to see the unborn king come and restore Zion and Jerusalem and have all the nations submit to them. They were completely satisfied with being subjects of Rome. So that is the whole thought experiment. That's what's happening. So this is why it's important for Almanazar not to trip and be like this, the New Testament, and say we're about the Old Testament and we're not about the whole book itself is required to make the point. And this is why Shembehet did not tell Almanazar to ignore the New Testament or even to ignore the writings of Paul, which I'm going to get into that. Because Paul understood the relationship between this groom and bride function. That's what Paul did. He understood what was meant by Jesus, groom, and the Christ, bride. You get what I mean? You get what I'm saying? So this is very important. So, but people trip on the writings of Paul because it's very heavily misunderstood. But this is to give me context to say, now that we understand that Jesus was saying, no, recontextualize, in Rome I made an appearance to just let you guys know that the unborn king is still on his way. So this means that all the promises made by the prophets regarding the nations, that he would do certain things in the context of the nations of Babylon, Greece, Persia, Tyre, Nineveh, all of these, that whole setting, that whole historical setting is not the context in which the unborn king chose to make an appearance. He's going to make an appearance in a future setting, in a future context. Right. So this is a cloning piece about Jesus, to recontextualize, to consummate, or to recontextualize and say, look, what you heard the prophets say, it is still on its way, but it's in the near future. Right. So that's very important.